Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Durham. Okay, my name is Justin Willis. I teach in the History Department here at Durham. I'm here today with my colleagues, Catherine and Kate, who are from our professional services staff, who are the people who make the department actually work, and with Thomas, who's one of our current students. We're here, and you're all here, because some of you are facing one of the most important decisions of your life. Where you go to university is going to affect very much the next few years of your life. It may well have consequences far beyond that, running through your life, in terms of what kind of job you go into, what part of the country you live in, who your friends are, who you know. All kinds of decisions can spring from this one choice about where you go to university. So we know it's an important one for you all. My own children went through this decision not very long ago, so I have quite a lot of sympathy for you all, sitting in this room listening to me talk. We're here really to give you information to help you make what will be the right decision for you. I'm not here specifically to try and sell you Durham. If some of you decide on the basis of today that you'd like to apply to Durham, that would be fantastic. We'll be delighted. But more than that, we want to give you the information that will help you make the decision that is right for you, because it is a big one. And you need to think carefully about this. So, just to give you an idea of formats, I'm going to talk at you for about 25 or 30 minutes. Then Thomas will talk to you a little bit about what it's like being a student here, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. Forgive me, there is a subtitling function active on the board here. The subtitles are not amazingly accurate, so sorry about that. I'm afraid that's a technology that I'm powerless to correct. So, what do you need to think about? Well, every university offers something different, and as I said, you need to choose what is the right place for you. And there are a lot of aspects to that decision. Going to university is not just studying. It's actually several years of your life. It's socialising. It's all of the extracurricular stuff you do. So there's a lot of things to think about, and I'm hoping that you'll all be taking the opportunity to look around the city and the institution today, to go to some of the other talks on other aspects of university life. But for this session, we're really just going to focus on studying history and what it's like to study history and how we teach it here, because that's really what we're best qualified to talk to you about. First of all, place. The history department isn't actually in this part of the university at all. We call this part of the university the Hill, for obvious geographical reasons. It's a hill. The history department is in the centre of Durham, on what we call the peninsula. That is on the loop of the river where the cathedral and the castle sit. We have two buildings there, which you'll see on the screen behind me. We don't have these sessions there, partly because those buildings are full of small rooms. They're basically offices. We do some of our seminar teaching there and our tutorial teaching, so our small group teaching happens there. But we don't have any big lecture rooms there, and so for events like this, we come to this kind of space. And actually all the lectures happen not in the history department, they happen in other parts of the university. But if you'd like to go and look at the history department from the outside, please do go and take a look there. It's a pretty day and the peninsula looks very nice today. By all means, go and take a look. We don't offer tours because it's actually really boring inside, because it's just a bunch of offices. There's nothing very exciting about it. So, what to think about? Well, things that characterise our programme, some of them I think you'd find in other universities too. Particularly a stress on progression and independence, and I'll talk to you a little bit about those. One thing that I think is unusual about Durham is the breadth that we offer in terms of types of historical study, in terms of periods of history that you can study, parts of the world that you can study, and approaches to historical study. And that is one thing that's a little bit distinctive about our department and about the way that we organise our programme, because our programme is intended to offer you a lot of choice and is also actually structured to make you take advantage of that choice. Now, that's something you should think about, because if you want to go to university just to study the history of 20th century Europe, this probably wouldn't be the right department for you, because we don't allow you to just do that. We make our students take advantage of the range of options that we offer. And we do that for a reason. We do it because we think that history is the study of how amazing and how creative and how appalling and how destructive humans can be. And we think that you can learn that lesson best by looking at human societies in a range of different places and times, because that helps you to think more about the commonalities and the differences, how things go wrong, how people mess up, how they do sometimes great things, sometimes terrible things. And we want our students to have the opportunity to think about different human societies in different times and places as they come to grips with that. So that's why we offer a choice, and that's why we make you take advantage of the choice. But that is a slightly distinctive thing, so you should think about whether that is what you want. Progression and independence are, I think, more common to history degrees, but I'll talk to you a little bit about what they mean to us here at Durham. Progression means that, well, basically, you progress because the degree gets harder over the course of the years that you're studying. We expect more from our students in the third year than we expect from them in the first year, and that is because it's our job to make them better at doing the things we're asking them to do. That progression also comes in an increasing emphasis on independence, intellectual independence to think for yourself, but also independence in terms of managing your time. In terms of contact hours, history degrees at Durham and in most places are relatively light, and they get lighter over the course of the programme. To begin with, in the first year, a student would probably have 8 or 9 contact hours a week. By the third year, they'll probably have 4 or 5 contact hours a week. So there's less contact because we are expecting students to be more independent in studying and thinking for themselves, and more able to meet deadlines and plan their own time in order to deal with the fact that they have relatively few contact hours. The contact hours get more intense. We're expecting more of the students, but they become fewer because we're expecting our students to develop their independence, to get better at organising and preparing. Roughly speaking, the degree begins with quite a lot of lectures in the first year. Most of our students will be in lectures 4, sometimes 5 hours a week. By the third year, they will be having hardly any lectures. And a lecture, I should say, is something like this, where I stand and I talk at you. And it's a biggish room. By the third year, our students have often, well, no lectures in a week, actually. All of their teaching is being done in seminars, that is small groups of a dozen or 15 students, or is being done through tutorials, which is 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 supervisions on a specific piece of work. So the number of contact hours goes down because we're expecting our students to be working harder, and we're expecting those hours of contact to be much more intense. In a lecture, you can sit and goof off at the back of the room and not do much. In a seminar, there isn't really anywhere to hide because there are only a small number of people in the room, and you'll be expected to be speaking and thinking all the time. So, progression and independence, the degree gets harder, we expect more from people, and we expect them to be working by themselves more to be ready for the contact hours. Progression also comes out in the way that we assess the degree. The first year in this university, and I think you'll find this in any university you go to in the UK actually, the first year is preliminary. That is, the marks that you get in your first year of study do not count towards your degree classification. There's a reason for this. Often people find the move from school to university a little bit difficult. Sometimes people stumble at that move. The first year is an opportunity to get used to the demands of university study and the distinct expectations of a university, so the marks don't count towards the final degree classification. The degrees are classified on the second and third year marks, 40% on the second year, 60% in the third year, because we are expecting our students to get better and to be performing at a higher level, so we want the assessment to reflect that. You should also think, in making your choice about where to study, about assessment. At Durham, we use both coursework and examinations to assess our students. There's more coursework, but there are exams, and every year here, students sit exams for every year of the programme. If you're someone who absolutely hates to do exams, you should think carefully, therefore, about whether this is the right place for you. We do this because we think that coursework and exams test and develop slightly different sets of skills, and we want our students to have that full range of skills, but it is something for you to bear in mind in making your choice. Because you will find that some universities are pretty much entirely coursework, some have a much heavier exam weighting than we do. So you should look carefully at the assessment regime to see, is it one that you'd be happy with? There are different ways of studying history at Durham. Mostly today I'm going to be talking to you about what we call the single honours degree. That's our students who come here and just study for a degree which has history written on it at the end. But we also teach quite a lot of students who are doing other degrees. We teach students on joint degree programmes that we have with other departments, which are basically half and half degrees. I'll speak a bit more about those in a moment. We also teach a fair number of students who are on combined honours degrees, liberal arts or combined social sciences. I won't talk a great deal about those programmes because there are separate talks about those here going on today, so you'd be able to find out more and better information from those. But all of these are ways to study history at Durham. Now, I said that we emphasise breadth of choice. So to explain that, I'm going to talk you through how the degree programme is structured, beginning with the first year. And this is talking, for the time being, about single honours students, who are the majority of the students that we teach. Each year of study, our students do the equivalent of 6 modules. Those modules can be kind of grouped, and in the first year, they're grouped in this way. As you see on the screen behind me, there's 1 double module and then 4 optional modules. The double module is what we call a core module, in that all of our single honours students take it. But I've already said to you that we emphasise choice. So it's not quite what it seems, because that core module does not involve you going to lectures in a room like this along with 200 other students and being talked at. That core module is taught through seminar groups of 12 students, each seminar group focusing on a specific theme or strand of study, as we call it, and working with the same module leader through the course of the year on that topic. So while it's a core module and everyone does it, everyone is doing something different. So it's not quite as core in the sense that everybody's together doing it. So that's 2 of the first year modules are taught through that. That involves 2 hourly seminars taught every 2 weeks over the course of the year. Our first year students also do 4 optional modules. Those are lecture heavy. There's basically a lecture for each of those modules in each week. There are also seminars for them, usually at 3-week intervals, spread through the year. So if you're a student here, you'd be doing your core module with your seminar meeting every 2 weeks, and you'd be doing 4 optional modules with a lecture every week and then a seminar probably every 3 weeks. So to give you an example of the kind of things that we study, the core module in the first year, which we call Making History, the aim of that is to get our students to think about why people write history books. What is it that makes someone decide this topic is really interesting, I want to write about it? And what are the consequences of writing a history book in terms of how do people respond to it? What is the afterlife of a history book? What becomes of the ideas and the arguments that are made in a book? And each of the strands on that core module looks at a particular book, basically, with someone who's an expert in that field. So, for example, my colleague Jennifer Luff, who's a US historian, teaches a Making History strand which focuses on a book called Strangers in the Land. It's a very famous, very influential book on US history. And she looks with her group of students at why this book was written, what did it say, how did people respond to it, and how have people continued to respond to it in subsequent years. So this is a very kind of focused, concentrated look, which allows you to think about US history more generally, but through the lens of this one particular influential book, and thinking about why the person wrote this book. What was the point of it? What were they trying to do? To give you an example of some of the optional modules at level 1, remember our students do 4 of these optional modules, and they get to choose from a list of these. This one you see on the board behind me, Power in Africa. This is a module that I teach on along with my colleague Rachel Johnson, whose photograph you can see there. It's really a survey module. It's intended to introduce our students to the study of the history of Africa, which most of them have not previously experienced. And it looks at the last 200 years of African history, thinking particularly about the nature of power in society in Africa and how that has changed over the course of time. So it's a big, broad module that rushes students around the continent, looking at a long space of time, really introducing them to the study of something that they're probably not familiar with at all. The second year also has 6 modules, because all years have 6 modules, and in the second year it's also arranged with 1 core module and 4 optional modules. Once again, the core module in the second year isn't quite what it sounds like, because everyone is doing something different. This, again, is taught through seminars under a seminar leader who takes the students through a particular focused course of study. In the first year, we tend to focus on a particular book. In the second year, that core module looks at the historiography, that is, the writing of history, around a particular theme or topic. And it allows students to think about and read widely about that particular topic, and to think about how the writing on it has changed over time and what has driven the way that people have written about the history of that theme. So that one runs seminar taught through the year. Students also do 4 optional modules, which, like those in the first year, involve lectures and seminars. The second year modules tend to be rather more focused. The first year ones are often big survey modules, like the Africa one, intended to introduce students to periods or parts of the world that they maybe not very familiar with. The second year, we use that as a basis to give students rather more focused modules on particular moments or periods that allow them to get more to grips with, again, perhaps slightly unfamiliar place or period of history. But those tend to be a bit more focused, those modules. Again, you can see there are some examples up there on the board behind me. I should say that we don't guarantee the availability of any given module in any one year. Our teaching is research-driven, it reflects the research interests of colleagues, and for that reason it changes over time. It's also, of course, sometimes affected when colleagues go on research leave or are unavailable for other reasons. So I can't guarantee to you that any module you see listed behind me would be available in any given year, but what I can say is that there will always be a choice of modules, and that there will always be a wide enough range that students are able to take full advantage of that choice of modules. Just to give you a sense of that, these are the option modules at level 2 that we had available this year. As you will see, there are really quite a lot of them. They're grouped, as you can see, chronologically, and that's because we require our students at level 1 and level 2 to take students across a range of time periods and a geographical range. As I said, you can't just study 20th century Europe. You have to do some medieval history, you have to do some early modern history, and you have to do some history which isn't just about Europe. I've explained why we do that, and what I would say is that in making students take advantage of the choice, we do try to ensure there is quite a lot of choice for them to enjoy, to think about. Third year, for the single honours students, again, the equivalent of 6 modules, but they're grouped slightly differently. In this department, and I think you'll find this is true of most history departments that you'd visit, the dissertation, the final year dissertation, is a big part of the programme. The final year dissertation is an independent piece of research undertaken by the student themselves with some supervision and guidance from a member of staff, but basically driven by themselves. It's a 12,000 word piece of work. It's sort of the equivalent of a journal article, and that's the model we're looking for here. We are looking for students to be independently identifying a topic, thinking about a question, doing the research, and writing for themselves something that looks like an academic journal article. This, to go back to my earlier point about progression and independence, is like the pinnacle of that development, because this really tests our students' abilities to manage their own time, to think for themselves, because they're having to do this themselves. They will meet regularly with their tutor, who will talk to them about what they're doing, but ultimately it's up to the student themselves to think about the topic, to identify the material with some guidance, and to use the material to develop their argument. So students really do have to be operating at quite a high level for this to work effectively. And they really have to be good at managing their time and good at thinking for themselves. So that's a big part of the third year. Our single honour students also do in the third year what's called a special subject. Again, I think you'd find this in a lot of departments around the country. A special subject is a seminar taught module which focuses on a very specific topic, usually the close research interest of the member of staff who is teaching it. It involves a combination of secondary reading and a lot of looking at primary source materials that the module leader has identified and made available to the students. Special subjects meet for 3 hours a week, so it's a 3-hour seminar each week. It's very intense. There's a lot of preparatory work to do because students have to do secondary reading but also look at primary material in advance, so there's a lot of expectation of students to put in the work beforehand for that. And that accounts basically for half of the final year, so it's a big chunk of the final study. Students in the third year will also do one option module. That's very largely, again, seminar taught with 2 hourly seminars meeting every other week. It's a little bit, in some ways, intellectually like some of the second year modules. It focuses on a particular topic, usually, and allows students to develop their understanding of that. So, that's the third year, with a lot of emphasis on the intensity of seminar interactions when you're in a seminar, but also with a lot of emphasis on independence and working for yourself through the dissertation. Third year special subjects, just to give you an example of some of those. Again, I can't guarantee that these will be available in any given year. There would usually be something like 14 or 15 special subjects to choose from. These are 3 of the ones that have been available in recent years. As you'll see, a wide range of parts of the world and a wide range of time periods are covered by these. So that's the degree programme, that's the sort of development of progression and independence, and that's how we offer you a lot of choice, and we try to make you take advantage of that choice. I've mentioned to you already module assessments. On the slide behind me, there is quite a lot of detail on that. I won't talk you through it because it would go straight out of your heads, I'm sure. Why wouldn't it? But you will be able to access this presentation online if you want to check it later. The key point to remember is, as I've said earlier, that we assess with both coursework and exams. Coursework predominates, but there are exams, and you should bear that in mind when you're thinking about where you're going to study. There is also a little bit of assessed oral presentation in the second year of our programme. That's because one of the skills we're trying to develop in our students is the ability to stand up for themselves and make a scripted argument. So that oral presentation is a 10 to 12 minute talk on the subject of a project which the students are writing for that particular module. It's delivered to the other the other students in the seminar group, of whom there are about a dozen. And the assessment is made on the basis of, well, the coherence, quality, and critical ability shown in the presentation. It's a relatively small part of the assessment, but it's something that we think it's important for our students to be developing. Okay, so that was what the single honours programme looks like. Just very quickly, Joint honours students, as I said, they're doing basically a half and half degree. There's a little bit of variation, but roughly, if you're doing a joint honours degree, you'll do half your modules in one department and half in the other. That would mean in any given year that there are some combinations of modules that you wouldn't be able to do in history because you'd have to be taking your 3 modules from the other department as well. But our joint honours students do have access to the range of modules. It's just that they can't do all of the modules that single honours history students can do. On the other hand, of course, they do get to study in their other subject, which is the great attraction of joint honours degrees, and we get quite a lot of joint honours students, joint honours applications. And these are, I think, very well regarded degrees, and I think I'm right in saying that students pretty much enjoy doing them. Briefly, liberal arts and the combined routes, they offer a way to combine across multiple departments. Joint honours degrees for just 2 departments. The liberal arts and combined routes allow you to take modules from 3 departments, so you can mix and match more. You don't end up with a degree with history written on it, you end up with a liberal arts or combined degree, but if you want to have that range of disciplines built into your degree, that's a good way of doing it, and it's something that you should think about if that's what you're looking for. If you're doing a joint honours degree in modern languages, all of our students doing that joint honours degree would spend the 3rd year of their study abroad and then come back to Durham for a 4th year, so that's a 4-year degree programme. Students on other degree programmes can also, if they wish, take a study year abroad or a work placement year between the 2nd and 3rd years, thus effectively kind of turning their programme into a 4-year one. That can take 2 forms. There are universities elsewhere in the world with whom we have partnerships, and students can go and study at those universities for a year, and there's some of those up on the board behind me. Or students can do work placements for a year. Either of those things the university is very happy with. We like to encourage students to do this because we think in terms of experience and networks there are great benefits to be developed from this. A thing to bear in mind is that in each case, this year doesn't count towards your degree classification. If you go and study at a university in China for a year, you would study there, but the marks wouldn't count towards your final degree classification. Your degree would only be classified on the Durham marks. So the experience you get is beneficial in multiple ways, but you don't bring the marks back to Durham. Okay, other things to think about are employability. I guess you'll all be aware that history is not really a vocational degree. There are people like myself who end up doing this for a living, and a number of our students do go into teaching. But mostly, the students who we teach do not end up using the historically specific knowledge that they get from the degree in their careers. But that isn't really the point of doing a history degree for most of our students. We're not really here to teach you dates and names. Our job is to teach our students to think critically and to argue for themselves and to be able to assess information critically, so that when you read something or when you hear someone say something, you think, okay, but why? Why is it like that? We teach our students to be questioning and to be critical, and we teach them to articulate their questions and their criticisms in a clear and comprehensible way. That's really the point of doing a history degree. It's to make you think independently and think critically and argue for yourself. I teach African history, and I say to my students, I don't really care if 10 years after you leave here, you can't remember when Ghana became independent. It's not really, you can Google that. But I really do care if you are able to think for yourself and make an argument for yourself and challenge other people's ideas in a courteous but articulate way. Those are the skills which we are trying to teach our students. And those are skills that are widely valued across a range of careers. Employability is statistics are often a bit dodgy on this, I have to say. I probably shouldn't say that, but it's actually really hard to keep track of what students do after they leave university for various reasons. But insofar as we're able to track this, the story is quite a good one for Durham. Our students generally do pretty well. And they do well because of the skills that we teach them, which translate into multiple careers, whether it's in law or the civil service, or whether it's in running your own business. Being able to think for yourself and speak for yourself and think critically, they're useful skills whatever you're going to be doing. Another thing for you to think about is what kind of support students get from an institution. Lots of students run into difficulty, and this is unsurprising. It's a big step going to university. Often students have not lived away from home before. They're facing new demands. They're facing new expectations, both from us as members of staff, but also from their peers. It can be a very difficult and discomforting time for students. And you should look carefully at the kinds of support that are being offered by institutions, the institutions that you're considering applying to. I say this feelingly. My own children have had difficulties and have had very different experiences from different institutions of the kind of support that is offered. So you should look carefully at this and think about, if I ran into trouble, how would they support me? And I like to think that we try pretty hard on this, but it's something that you should be thinking about for yourself and making your own judgment about where you'd get support. The other thing I would say is, wherever you go to university, if you do find yourself struggling, tell someone. Don't hold back. You make sure that you get support. You've got a right to expect it. You should get it. Offers. I guess you'll all know that we have a quite high standard offer in history. The details are there, but you're probably all familiar with this already. I should say that we do each year make a number of contextual offers which are lower than this standard offer, and we make those on the basis of the information that we get about students from their UCAS forms, and we think quite carefully about what offer to make. But that is our standard offer. The application process here is a competitive and selective one. We're very lucky because we receive applications from more talented, able people than we are able to admit. And that means that we actually have to spend quite a lot of time thinking about making offers, about who to make offers to, and about how to make offers fairly and justly. And we do this on the basis of all the information that you give us. You'll all be applying through UCAS, and the information on the UCAS form is all the information that we have about you. And we try to do our very best to make fair decisions on the basis of that information. We look at everything. We look at results, we look at references, and we look at your personal statement, and we look at any contextual information that we've got. As a department, we work closely with the central university body that does this actual assessment, and we're in very close dialogue with them about what it is that we're looking for and the kind of decisions that are made. We have, I'm afraid, a reputation for being slow with processing applications, and it's true, we are slow, and I'm sorry about that. I wish we were faster, but it's because we are trying to be as fair as possible to a very large number of applicants, and that does mean looking carefully at a lot of forms and sometimes looking at them 2 or 3 times over. So if you apply to Durham, it may well be the case that it takes a while for us to get back to you, and I'm really sorry, and I know this can be distressing, I know it can be very difficult because it will be happening at a time which is quite difficult in your lives because of exams and so on. But if you're not hearing from us, it isn't because we've already decided against you or because we've forgotten you. It's because we are trying to make the fairest decisions possible. So please bear with us on that. We do look at personal statements very carefully. It's hard for me to give advice on this without it turning into what sound like instructions, so I have to be kind of careful about what I say, but it's a personal statement. It's about you. It's one of the very few ways in which we can get any sense of you as a person. Remember, what we're looking for is people who will thrive at Durham, who will thrive with our expectations of independence, and who will thrive with the expectation that they'll be able to think critically and manage their own time and develop their own thoughts critically. So we're looking for evidence of independence and of critical thinking. There are many ways of trying to give that, and I won't kind of steer you towards one way or another, but that is what we're aiming, that's what we're looking for. So if you're able to convey that, that will be really helpful to us. So please bear that in mind. Finally, I would say there are various ways to ask questions of us throughout the process. There are a couple of links there. So if you do have questions, that's after this session. Those are ways to get in touch with us. All right, I'll stop here and hand over to Thomas, who will talk to you about what it's like being a student here. Thomas.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Thomas. I'm a second-year history student here at Durham. I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes or so about what it's like being a history student, what my kind of perspective on the course is, what the teaching is like, what you kind of spend your time on, and why I think Durham is a great place to study history. So firstly, looking at the course, and this has been stressed already, there is really the freedom for you guys to choose a range of modules across time, period, geography, and subject, and so on and so forth. And so often you'll come across with subjects like political, religious, social history, but also economic history, gender, identity, and so on. And often these will be kind of mixed into modules, at least in your first year, and then later on some modules kind of more revolve around these subjects. And we have great expertise in British and European history, but equally also in also other kinds of other parts of the world. So America, the modules on American slavery at the moment, Asian history, also Eastern Europe and Central European history, and African history too. So most places in the world we've got great expertise on. And so it's a great opportunity. I'm sure you guys probably won't have come across some of these areas. So it's a great opportunity to try something new at university, and that's what we encourage people to do. But also, it's also a great opportunity to look at in depth more at something that you've looked at already. So at A-level, I had one of my topics was on modern British political history from about 1900. And when I came here in my first year, I did a module all about the rise of the welfare state. So you're looking at much more at topics in much more depth. You're looking at the latest academic writings, the debates among historians, and the primary sources and all these kind of things. So great opportunity to try something new, great opportunity to learn more as well too. On average, your typical week in your first year, about 8 contact hours. And these are mainly divided up between your lectures, which you'll have 1 a week for each module, and then you have your seminars. And these are basically with a leading expert in the field and about 10 other people of you guys, of students. And it's really an opportunity for you to get together, look at some primary sources, discuss them, think about what the key questions are in the field and how you might go about answering them, what problems they might raise, and also look at some recent journal articles and book chapters by historians that you will have read in advance, getting to grips with what we call the historiography, what's been written about the subject already, what we think of those arguments, whether they're convincing or not, and where are the gaps. And so it's also just a really great opportunity to meet other people doing history on your course and kind of sharing your love of history together. So in terms of what you spend your time on, you've got lectures and seminars, but you also have a lot of free time, as you will have noticed, especially compared to other students that do science subjects. And this gives you a lot of independence and freedom to decide for yourselves how to structure and manage your time. So you can spend quite a bit of your time, a lot of time with history, on extracurricular activities, music, sports, university clubs and societies, getting involved in your college life, all kinds of things. But also you'll need to have spent time working and preparing for these seminars that we've been talking about, and for your essays, doing reading most often and eventually writing those essays. And some people, like me, I treat it like a day job, try and work kind of 9 till 4:30, 5 o'clock. But people work in different ways, and that's totally fine. You've got the total range of options here to kind of work in the time and in the places that best fit you. The other thing to say about assessment is that we've got a mix of exams and coursework, and so there's some flexibility there for you. But also with coursework and essays, one thing I would say is you saw the broad range of module choices up on the board that we're offering at the moment. So you can see how there'll be plenty of options on those lists, I'm sure, that will interest you. But within those modules, you'll get long lists of essay questions to choose from. So out of that, you'll definitely find one or two interesting topics to write about and really get excited about. And what you often find is that it's an opportunity to read books and articles about subjects you're interested in that you've been meaning to get around to for a while, but you've never quite had the time. So it really is an enjoyable experience. That's what I'd stress. Finally, about Durham, and why Durham is a great place. One of the things I'd say is, as well as having those lectures and seminars, here at Durham we've got office hours, where these are a couple of hours in a week where a lecturer is free for students to go and see them and to ask them for advice and feedback. So you can ask them questions about the course. You could run an essay plan past them. You could get feedback on an essay that you've done recently and learn about how you ask about how you might improve and progress further, or ask for reading recommendations and so on. So it's a great opportunity to meet with someone, leading expert, one-to-one, and get advice about how to progress further. And that's the great thing about Durham, that these are some of the leading experts in Britain and indeed in the world on these subjects, and these people are actively researching about the topics that they're teaching. I've got tutors that have books coming out at various points in the year, and they're actively thinking and writing professionally about that historical material that you're looking at in seminars, and sometimes you'll be reading one of their articles perhaps for your seminars. The final thing I'd say is that Durham is just truly a wonderful place to study history. As an institution, it's rich in terms of its libraries and its resources. You'll be doing a fair bit of reading as a history student, but also with those archives. As you go throughout your the course, you'll be doing projects occasionally, and those archives are a great resource for those projects and eventually for your dissertation. And you've got the cathedral and castle here as well. It's just a beautiful historic setting. Do make sure to go out and look at the city today. It is really quite surreal studying history here as a student beneath the castle with the cathedral bells ringing.